At the beginning of January 2026, nothing had really settled. On paper, there was care in place. In practice, things were still unstable. There was no clear structure holding everything together, no consistent communication, no sense that anything had moved into a properly functioning state. It felt like separate parts existing without really connecting. Before I continue, a brief note. This video uses a generated version of my voice and likeness. The content itself is mine. I've structured it this way because it's the only reliable way for me to document everything clearly and consistently. At that point in January, I was still relying on a temporary care arrangement. 3 visits a day, breakfast, lunch, supper. That mattered. Physically, I still needed help, but the scope of that help was narrow. The role of my carer, Sarah, was mostly limited to basic tasks. Helping me shower, helping me get dressed, heating food, putting it in front of me. And that was more or less it. Anything beyond that sat in a grey area. Cooking properly, cleaning, washing up, organization, even just slowing things down and doing something with a bit more care. Sometimes those things happened, but not consistently, not reliably, so you couldn't build around them. From the outside, it looked like care was in place, but what was actually there was closer to maintenance. Enough to keep things going, not enough to make life stable. There were also communication issues, unclear expectations, missed signals, moments where I didn't know whether something would be done or not. Sometimes I would ask for a bit more help, and you could feel the resistance. Not said directly, but clear enough. So I adjusted. I stopped asking for certain things, lowered expectations, worked around it. Over time, that becomes the pattern. Not because it's right, because it's easier than constant friction. This isn't about one person. Sarah, as an individual, was kind. She was present. She helped me through a difficult period. But the structure she was working inside didn't allow for full care. And that structure shows up in a lot of places. Across care agencies, across council services, across parts of the NHS. A kind of functional detachment, where the job becomes do what is required, do it quickly, move on, and over time something gets lost. The slower part, the human part, the part where care isn't just about completing a task, but how that task is done. Taking a bit more time, being patient, paying attention, that layer often disappears. And the people most affected by that are the ones least able to challenge it. Older people, disabled people, people without the energy to push back on every small thing. So what you end up with is something that technically works, but doesn't really care. And that was the environment I was living in at the start of January 2026. At the same time, everything on the administrative side was still active. Emails, follow-ups, requests, unanswered questions. Nothing had been resolved. If anything, it had spread. Different threads running at once. Different people involved. Different parts of the system responding at different speeds, or not responding at all. Keeping track of it became a task in itself. What had been said, what hadn't, what needed chasing. If you didn't stay on top of it, it drifted. And when it drifted, it reset. So I started structuring it more deliberately, tracking communication, keeping records. Around this time, I was also using ChatGPT more consistently, not for the first time, but in a more structured way, as part of the process, to organize things, to structure emails, to make sense of responses, to work out where pressure needed to be applied, not blindly, but as a way of bringing some logic into something that was otherwise fragmented. And that changed how it felt. Less reactive, more step by step. At the same time, there were other pressures underneath all of this. Financial ones. By that stage, I was already in significant debt to the council. around £8,000 and increasing, because contributions were expected for care that hadn't really been functioning properly from the beginning. So there was a contradiction running through everything. The care wasn't properly in place, but I was still being charged for it. That didn't get resolved. It just sat there. Another constraint. Something shaping what could happen next. By mid-January, the situation had a kind of shape to it. Limited care, inconsistent communication, multiple threads running at once, and a growing need to manage all of it actively. Because if I didn't, it didn't hold itself together. Then something more concrete happened. There was a visit that didn't happen. No warning, no clear explanation at the time. Just an absence. In a structure like that, it has an immediate effect. There isn't much flexibility. You're not choosing when help arrives. You're relying on it. So when it doesn't happen, you adjust. You wait at first. Then you work out what you can manage on your own. What can be delayed, what can't. And you move forward from there. That part wasn't new. I had already been living like that for a long time. Falls, for me, were not unusual. They weren't dramatic events. They were part of how my condition behaves. Something that happens from time to time. Something you deal with, recover from, and move past. But that's exactly the problem. Because it shouldn't be normal. It shouldn't be something you absorb and continue from as if nothing has happened. It should be something that doesn't happen. Or at least something that triggers a response. That wasn't how I had been handling it. Up to that point, most things had been absorbed. Accepted, misunderstandings, gaps in care, delays, taken in, worked around, moved past. So when I fell this time, the fall itself wasn't what stood out. It was what I did afterwards. Instead of letting it pass, I wrote it down. The missed visit, the absence, the fall, as a record. And that was different because it didn't stop there. From that point onwards, I started recording things more consistently. Not just major incidents. Everything that formed part of the pattern. Every missed visit. Every unclear phone call. Every withheld number that turned out to be someone from the council. Every time I had asked for written communication and still received a call instead. Even physical responses, stress, heart rate, moments where the situation had a direct effect on my body. All of it, not perfectly, but deliberately. That changed the way the situation functioned. It was no longer just something I was experiencing, it was something I was documenting. Something that could be referred back to. Something that could be used. There was a cost to that. Before this, part of how I coped was by not holding on to everything. Things would happen, and I would move past them. Recording everything changed that. It meant keeping things, seeing the pattern build, bringing the negative parts into focus repeatedly. That is difficult, but it became necessary, because without that record, nothing really held, and ChatGPT helped shape that approach. It helped me see that patterns mattered, that evidence had to be built over time, that each incident shouldn't be treated as isolated if it formed part of something wider. So instead of just reacting, I started connecting things, recording events, raising concerns, using safeguarding where appropriate, keeping communication in writing, making sure things didn't disappear. Around the same time, I also started building this channel, using AI to help me do it, the voice, the video, the scripts, a way of going back through everything that had happened, a way of retelling it carefully, putting it somewhere outside my own head. And over time, that helped. I wasn't as overwhelmed. It felt less like things were just happening to me, and more like I was doing something with them. At the same time, the formal processes were still moving. Safeguarding had been raised, questions asked, clarifications requested, but the responses didn't fully resolve things. Some came back, some didn't, so the recording became more important, because it filled the gaps the system wasn't filling. By late January 2026, that's what the situation had become. Not a single issue, a collection of events logged, tracked, connected, care still limited, communication still inconsistent, financial pressure still present in the background, multiple processes running at the same time. But now, instead of everything passing through and disappearing, it was being held, captured, built into something that could be used moving forward. And once that starts, it carries forward into February,